There has always been something unusual about the way you think. You sensed it even as a child. The speed at which your mind takes apart a conversation while everyone else is still agreeing. The way you detect the flaw in a plan before the speaker has even finished explaining it. The strange, almost uncomfortable awareness that most people around you are operating on a completely different level of frequency. You have carried that feeling for years without having a clear label for it. Today you get that label and the markers that confirm it. But here is the part that may unsettle you. A sharper mind does not make life easier. It often makes it lonelier. And by the end of this, you will understand exactly why. Habit 1. You debate with yourself before you debate with anyone else. Most people form an opinion and then defend it like territory. They plant a flag in whatever they first believed and spend the rest of their lives protecting it. They call this conviction. It is not. It is intellectual laziness dressed up as certainty. You operate differently. You challenge your own ideas before they ever leave your mouth. There is a cognitive pattern researchers have connected directly to higher analytical intelligence. It is called dialectical thinking. It is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time and examine both without panic. Not to find a safe middle ground, not to appear balanced for social approval, but to genuinely pressure test your own beliefs the way an engineer stress tests a bridge before allowing traffic to cross it. Most minds cannot tolerate this. It feels like betrayal to question your own conclusion. It creates a deep psychological discomfort known as cognitive dissonance. The average person resolves that discomfort quickly by choosing one side and ignoring the other. It feels like relief. It feels like clarity. But it is the intellectual equivalent of closing your eyes during surgery because the sight of blood makes you uneasy. The issue does not disappear just because you refuse to look at it. Your mind, however, does not retreat. You remain in the tension. You allow the contradiction to exist. You question your own reasoning the way a skilled prosecutor questions a hostile witness. Only after that internal trial is finished do you speak. This is why people sometimes think you are slow to decide. This is why they mistake careful thought for indecision. They assume you cannot make up your mind. The reality is the opposite. You refuse to form conclusions cheaply. You do not fall in love with ideas before testing them. If you constantly find yourself arguing inside your own head, questioning your own assumptions before turning them into beliefs, you are not confused. You are operating a cognitive system that many people simply do not have. And yes, it costs you something. It costs you the comfort of simple answers. But what it gives you is more valuable. It gives you precision. Habit 2. You become bored in conversations that energize everyone else. There is a type of boredom that has nothing to do with laziness. It is not the boredom of someone who lacks motivation. It is the boredom of a mind that processes information faster than it is being delivered. You have experienced this. Someone is telling a story. The room is engaged. People are reacting at the right moments, and you are already ahead. You predicted the ending. You identified the main point. You traced the direction of their argument before they reached their second sentence. Now you are waiting for them to arrive at a place you reached long ago. This is not arrogance. You did not choose to feel disengaged. Your brain is simply operating at a speed that does not match the pace of the discussion. That mismatch creates a subtle isolation. You cannot explain it without sounding superior, so you learn to hide it. You nod at the right times. You perform interest. You maintain eye contact. But inside, your mind is restless. It is searching for something more complex, something that matches its rhythm. When it does not find that stimulation, it does not shut down. It reallocates attention. You begin connecting ideas from different areas of knowledge. You draw patterns between the current conversation, something you read recently, and a problem you have been considering for weeks. This mental wandering is not weakness. It is spontaneous ideation. Your mind is not drifting aimlessly. It is redirecting energy toward challenges that deserve its capacity. If typical conversations leave you understimulated while others are fascinated, do not label yourself as broken. Your boredom is information. It reveals the altitude at which your thinking naturally functions. Habit 3. You change your mind and feel no embarrassment about it. The average person treats a changed opinion as a public humiliation. They would rather defend a flawed stance than endure the social discomfort of admitting error. Their identity is fused with their beliefs. To alter the belief feels like losing part of themselves. You operate differently. You have revised positions you once held strongly, career decisions, political ideas, personal judgments. And instead of feeling defeated, you felt clarity, almost relief, like something realigned internally. This quality is known as cognitive flexibility. The willingness to update beliefs when presented with new evidence is strongly linked to superior judgment, not raw intelligence, not education alone, but the simple discipline of saying, "I was wrong. Here is what I now understand." The mind that cannot update cannot evolve. The mind that refuses correction eventually hardens into irrelevance. You separate your identity from your opinions. You treat your beliefs as working models, not sacred possessions. That allows you to move with speed and accuracy while others cling to outdated conclusions. If you revise your views often and feel sharper afterward, that is not inconsistency. It is intellectual honesty. Habit 4. You notice what is missing before you notice what is present. Most people walk into a room and observe what is visible: the furniture, the people, the noise. Their perception builds reality by adding details. Your perception works differently. You register what is absent, the person who should be there but is not, the topic that was avoided, the silence that arrived half a second too quickly, the question no one is asking. You pay attention to gaps, to omissions, to negative space. What people choose not to say often reveals more than what they openly state. What is excluded from an argument often exposes its weakness. Your mind naturally scans for absence because absence carries meaning. If you often find yourself focused on what is not there, on the detail others ignored, you are using a level of perception that is rare. You see beyond the surface presentation. You detect structure beneath appearance. Habit 5. You feel mentally exhausted after social interaction, not because you dislike people, not because you are antisocial, but because you are processing them. There is a specific kind of fatigue that comes from cognitive overload. You leave a gathering drained in a way that rest alone does not fix. While others were participating in a single layer of conversation, you were operating on multiple layers at once. You tracked words. You analyzed tone. You noticed micro-expressions. You mapped social dynamics. You observed who dominated, who withdrew, who avoided eye contact at key moments. You were not simply talking. You were interpreting. You were decoding. That continuous analysis consumes energy. Most people engage socially at surface level. You engage at depth, whether you intend to or not. The exhaustion is not weakness. It is the cost of perception running constantly in the background. This is why sharper minds often feel isolated. Not because they are superior, but because their internal processing does not align with the external pace of the world around them. They question themselves more. They update faster. They notice gaps others miss. They grow tired from seeing too much at once. And while this may create distance, it also creates clarity. A sharper mind does not promise comfort. It does not guarantee ease. It demands solitude at times. It demands patience. It demands resilience. But it also offers something rare. It offers accuracy. It offers depth. It offers the ability to see reality without the comforting filters most people rely on. If you recognize yourself in these habits, understand this clearly. There is nothing wrong with the way you think. Your mind is not defective. It is demanding. It operates at a level that requires strength to carry. And yes, that strength can feel lonely, but it is also powerful. She found that people who have a higher sensitivity to their environment are not stepping away from social situations because they are not interested. They step back because their brains are taking in far more information in every interaction than the average person. The tiredness is not emotional. It is mental processing. Your hardware feels overheated because it is running programs that most people's systems do not even have installed. There is a historical example that shows this in a very accurate way. Charles Darwin was known to attend scientific meetings and dinner gatherings with colleagues, seem fully involved, add meaningful thoughts to discussions, and then withdraw into almost complete isolation for several days afterward. His wife, Emma, wrote in her letters that Charles would return from social events looking as if he had been lifting heavy furniture for hours. He had not been lifting anything physical. He had been carrying conversations. But for a mind like his, conversations were like furniture, solid, heavy, and demanding a great amount of effort to move through. Darwin was not delicate. He was thinking at a level of depth that used energy most people never have to spend. His social exhaustion was not weakness, it was the cost of perception. Here is what most people fail to understand about this pattern. The exhaustion is not a flaw, it is the receipt. It is evidence that your mind was operating at a level the room could not see. You were not simply hearing words, you were decoding them. And decoding human beings in real time is one of the most energy-demanding mental tasks that exists. If you often feel drained after social interactions that leave everyone else feeling excited and refreshed, stop labeling it as a disorder. See it as a signal. Your mind is not broken. It is working at such a high resolution that the processing cost shows up in your body. Most people leave a conversation with a memory. You leave with a blueprint. You feel uneasy about your own intelligence. This is the habit no one expects, and it may be the clearest sign of a truly sharp mind. You do not walk around feeling brilliant. In fact, you often feel unsure. You feel like you are overlooking something important. You observe people who speak with confidence about their knowledge, and you wonder how they manage it, how they can be so certain, how they can talk with such authority about topics that, from your point of view, contain layers of complexity they have not even started to explore. This is not imposter syndrome in the popular sense. This goes deeper. It is built into how advanced thinking works. The Dunning-Kruger effect, studied widely in psychology, shows an imbalance that almost feels unfair. People with very little knowledge in a field often greatly overestimate their skill. They do not know enough to understand what they are missing. The opposite is also true. People with real expertise tend to underestimate their ability because they clearly see how much remains unknown. Your discomfort with your own intelligence is not a defect. It is the natural mathematical result of knowing more. The more you learn, the wider the edge of your ignorance becomes. A person who has read one book on economics may feel like an authority. A person who has read 50 often feels like a beginner. The circle of knowledge grows, and so does the border it shares with everything that is still unknown. There was a British mathematician named Andrew Wiles who spent 7 years in almost complete secrecy working on Fermat's last theorem, one of the most famous unsolved problems in mathematics. When he finally presented his proof in 1993, people who were there said he looked uncomfortable with the praise. Not because he was pretending to be modest, but because during the process of solving that problem, he had faced many related problems he could not solve. His success showed him how much he still did not understand. The achievement made him feel less capable, not more. If you carry a quiet discomfort about your own mind, If you shrink a little when someone calls you smart, if you feel like a fraud even when the evidence proves otherwise, stop reading that as weakness. It is actually proof that your mental map is large enough to include its own empty spaces. The fool sees a complete image because he has never looked beyond the frame. You see an incomplete image because you know the frame is not the limit. You have a relationship with time that unsettles other people. You think about death more often than most, not in a dark or fearful way, but with a calm and clear understanding that time cannot be replaced. And most people spend it as if they have endless reserves. This separates a sharp mind from one that is simply educated. Education fills the brain. Awareness of mortality sharpens it. You watch people waste hours on arguments that will not matter in 6 months. You see them chase approval from people they will not even remember in 5 years. You see them invest energy into drama, gossip, status competitions, and fake busyness, and something inside you pulls back, not with judgment, but with confusion, because you cannot understand how they fail to notice the clock. Research shared by the American Psychological Association has shown a strong link between awareness of time and long-term strategic thinking. People who keep a conscious but calm awareness of their own mortality tend to make better decisions over time. They are less likely to fall into sunk cost traps. They are more willing to leave projects that are clearly failing. They are quicker to end relationships that drain them instead of helping them grow. Not because they are heartless, but because they understand the math. Every hour spent on something empty is an hour taken away from something meaningful. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius kept a personal journal that was never meant for the public. In it, he often reminded himself that he would die one day, not as a punishment, but as a tool for focus. He would write versions of the same thought again and again. You could leave life right now. Let that guide what you do, say, and think. He was not hopeless. He was alert. He used mortality like a navigator uses a compass, not to scare himself, but to make sure he was moving in the right direction. You do this naturally. When someone asks for your time, your first internal question is not, "Can I do this?" It is this worth the hours it will cost me? Knowing those hours will never return. That calculation runs quietly in the background of your mind, screening every request, every chance, every relationship through a filter most people do not develop until much later in life. This is why you sometimes appear distant to others. They think you are cold. In reality, you are selective. You have an internal system that values time above money, above status, above social approval, and that system leads you to actions that confuse people, leaving events early, saying no without long explanations, spending entire weekends alone focused on a single problem that captures your interest, ending conversations when they stop creating insight. They label it antisocial, you call it arithmetic. If you carry this steady awareness of time, if you struggle to waste it the way others do, understand this is not darkness. It is a mental orientation most people never reach. Many only gain it in their final years when the clock becomes impossible to ignore. You developed it early, and that gives you something intelligence alone cannot give: clarity of purpose. Now you have seen the patterns, the daily signs of a mind operating at a frequency most people cannot sense. You argue with yourself before you argue with others. You get bored in conversations that hold everyone else's attention. You change your mind without shame. You notice what is missing before you notice what is present. You feel drained by the invisible effort of reading people. You feel uneasy about your own ability. You protect your time with a seriousness that unsettles others. These are not random traits. They are not personality flaws dressed up as compliments. They are the working signatures of a mind processing the world at a depth and speed that comes with a price. Loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of having few people who operate the way you do. The loneliness of seeing something clearly and struggling to explain it to someone who does not have the structure to receive it. The loneliness of living in a world that rewards quick opinions over careful thinking, confidence over accuracy, noise over insight. You have likely spent years wondering if something was wrong with you, if your boredom meant you were lacking something, if your tiredness meant you were weak, if your constant thinking was a curse. It is not a curse. It is a cost. It is the cost of carrying a mind built for a depth of engagement that the modern world does not require and does not often reward. But here is what changes everything. The world may not reward it loudly, but in the quiet decisions that shape careers, relationships, and legacies, it is the only thing that truly counts. The loud mind gets attention. The sharp mind produces results. The popular mind gathers followers. The precise mind gains freedom. You are not broken. You are not late. You are not strange. You are simply awake in a room where many people are still asleep. And the discomfort you feel is not a sign to dull yourself. It is the cost of awareness. The next time someone says you think too much, that you are too intense, that you should relax, understand what they really mean. They mean your frequency makes them uneasy, and that unease is not yours to fix. It is confirmation. But here is the question that should stay with you tonight. If your mind is this sharp and you are still not using it fully, what are you protecting yourself from? And what would happen if you stopped protecting it? That is a shadow worth studying. If this has opened your eyes, remember this is only what can be said openly. There are deeper mental patterns that cannot always be discussed publicly without resistance. The psychology behind the curtain, the forces that explain not only how sharp minds function, but how they are slowly dulled by the environment around them, exists beyond what is visible. Many will scroll past this. That is the filter working exactly as designed.